So
That's not uncommon. I'll get 4 announcements to a council meeting. And then it's an attendee, and then it's my personal, and then it's on the calendar, and I just, which one do I hit?
Oh,
he
yeah.
is showing up on the attendee side, and I'll
Yep,
go ahead and
move
promote
her on over.
panelists.
Well, she was going to watch us and complain right after Alvin got done.
Thank you for letting me in.
Really? We've been talking about you.
Oh, well, good.
All good things, of course.
I don't know what happened. I couldn't get in.
Well, we have you now,
Yep, I'm here.
and we also know now to open the meeting on the hour so that if we don't have members who got in through panelists, we can move them over, because we were texting you and calling you, and then Joelle says, well, why don't we check and see if she's in there as a participant?
There you go, Joelle.
Well, he found me by texting me, and I've been sitting here trying all kinds of ways to get in, but I don't know what. Joelle did something magic.
Yeah, I don't have an explanation for that. I did check in the Zoom settings, and you are listed there as a panelist. For some reason, the Zoom system didn't capture that and just drop you in on the attendee side.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we are live and recording now.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And you're running the meeting.
And so, all right, everybody, welcome to the Water Demand Committee. And I think the first thing we do is find out if there's people here that want to talk. Is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Well, actually, we should precede that with a call to order and roll call by Joelle, and then
Okay.
general
Thank
public
you.
comment.
Thank you. Okay, Joelle?
Okay. So Mayor Roberson,
Here?
Director Edwards,
Here?
Chair Anderson.
Here.
Let the record reflect that all directors are present.
Excellent. And so now you're correct, Director Anderson, that just general comment from the public, not on any of the agendized items.
Items. Yeah. So is there anybody here today, Joelle?
We have a number of attendees.
Okay.
So if you're participating with your electronic device, just make sure that you use the raise hand feature. If you're calling in, dial *9. And Chair Anderson, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Okay, thank you so much. The first item is the adoption, to consider the adoption of the February 4th and the March 4th committee meeting minutes.
I move approval.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions? We can have a roll call vote.
Do you want to ask if any member of the public has public comment for item number 1 before we move on to the vote?
Sure. Sorry. Does
That's okay.
anybody have any comment about the minutes? For item number 1? Anybody in the public?
And Chair Anderson, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Thank you so much. We can go ahead with a roll call vote.
Mayor Roberson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Chair Anderson.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously on a vote of 3-0.
Okay. So now we're moving on. We have a number of discussion items, and those are to be addressed by.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start.
Yeah.
And this will be a relatively short meeting, just for heads up, we mentioned that earlier. So the Item 2, discussion item 2 is update on the district's Water for Housing initiative. It should have said what initiative, but just kind of a summary of where we're at, I guess is easily summarized as nowhere. So in speaking to Office of the Chief Counsel a week ago, early last week, so about 10 days ago, they have not posted any of the material yet. They've been, the state is now trying to adjust their whole policies for websites to yield to the ADA requirements. And so their previous policy of just posting all correspondence to a section related to the cease and desist order and CalAM's activities is changing. They've promised to establish some sort of new site that will have all the communication. They had not yet decided how to address our application with a workshop or a hearing or just follow-up questions. I did try to put in a call this week to update that a little bit, and I did not get a response, but I think it's safe to say that it's a little bit of a slow walk, if you will. We have had letters of support submitted by Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, the Land Watch, the League of Women Voters, actually just yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Coalition Peninsula Housing, which is an amalgam of city council and mayor folks outside of their own city councils. And then some of the cities have drafted letters. We have, and I've discussed with some of you, we have some concerns because it is a dry year as to what the mathematics might yield in terms of the likelihood of being able to do 75 acre feet over a 3-year period. I don't think that, well, I will tell you, it's not going to change our approach. I think what we want to do is work our way all the way through the approval process, and then before running with it, I would suggest maybe we take another look at weather in the winter and then initiate this in the spring if it looks like we've developed a little bit more of a buffer. Also, that will give us time to get 2 new deep wells online for Pure Water Monterey, and we can run the plant at a higher flux. It's been designed for 5.4 MGD, and we've tested it at 5. We're typically running at far less than that. So there's capacity for extra water. But because of the dry year, because of the transition for ASR to go from a kind of an annual event to a multi-year, multi-weather cycle event with storage, it does not have a whole lot of buffer built up. And so that's our current concern, but we'll redo that math, I guess, is the message. I will get a schedule from the State Water Board shortly to see if we're going to do any sort of formal workshops, and we'll go from there. So not much more to report.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the next item is the water demand.
Well, any public comment? Joelle, any hands raised or
Reminding
what
me.
for item 2? Oh, you're doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
no.
missed last month's meeting and I have a short memory. What can I say?
That's probably a good thing.
There
right,
you go.
We'll move on to discussion item number 3. Discuss the need for dry year / drought response. With this, and this is an item we'll be taking up with the public outreach committee tomorrow morning. So the rest of the country has declared a west-wide drought. The state itself keeps using the word drought. We, the district, don't use the word drought, but every May 1st, we have to look at our available supplies relative to our scheduled demand and make an assertion as to whether we need to take any further steps on our conservation and rationing plan or what have you. We, the district, typically don't use the word drought until we have 2 dry or critically dry years in a row. We simply say, hey, it's a dry year, or it's a bad year, or it's the worst year we've had since 1928, those kind of things. But as of right now, it's simply a dry year. Stephanie, I don't know if you can pull up screen sharing if you've got that graphic.
Yeah, just a second here.
But in today's weekly and tomorrow's pine cone will be one of our kind of starting points. So our plan is to move at this slowly. We will be developing an outreach plan, likely in conjunction with CalAm, for messaging, because clearly it's a dry year. And there we go. So this is what appeared in the weekly today, and it's just, hey, we're experiencing a dry year. Now's a good time to do these things. You may recall during the 4-year drought that we began Save Water, Go Blue public outreach program. I believe that was in the 2nd year of the drought. Stephanie, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So after it was truly an official drought, we did a lot of heavy advertising. We stepped up enforcement on water waste. And that's where I think we're headed for this summer. But we're not declaring a state of emergency just yet, even though we're almost halfway through May. We've only had one really wet May, and that was 3 years ago in recent memory. So we're very likely done with precipitation for the summer, but it is simply that. It is not a long-term drought, even though that's affecting decisions in Sacramento. Let me give you an example. There's now discussion about trying to move some emergency funding for drought response forward through the legislature. But at the same time, Aqua and other partners have been trying to do another Prop 1-like bond issue, a big, like $6 billion, $7 billion bond issue for all things water. And so the message that we may end up getting out of Sacramento is, hey, let's throw money at a quick response to the drought, but it could happen at the expense of another long-term grant program. So, we'll keep our eye on things like that. But as the district, and our hope, I think we've got a call on Tuesday with Catherine Stedman at CalAm to talk about our conservation rationing plan and where we're headed. So at that point in time, even though I think Catherine was on as an attendee, we will talk with CalAm a little bit more about response and try to remain coordinated. But apart from additional enforcement, the next steps are really public information campaign, moral suasion, stepped up enforcement. I think there could be some benefit to reminding people about serving water at restaurants and so forth, just to raise the consciousness. But the next stage, the third stage, are conservation rates, also affectionately known as penalty rates. And it's a 2-step process, one where all the rates are raised 25%. And if that doesn't get the desired result, then rates are raised 40%. That's, in effect, economic rationing without having to pick winners and losers ourselves. The 4th step is rationing. And I don't think any of us on a single dry year want to be in the 3rd or the 4th stage. So, rest assured that our focus right now is on communication and messaging, and hopefully, and more foggy days where irrigation's less needed. But anyway, stay tuned on that. The other thing you need to know is that on that May 1st declaration that the district typically does relative to, is there enough storage and enough water for the next 17 months? So basically, as of May 1st, we have 5 more months of the current water year and then a full year of the following water year. That equals 17 months. And we typically do a look forward at what the quarterly water budget might look like, or the total water budget for that period. And then what's our available resources? Well, we've got the aquifer under the Carmel River is completely full, but our math has changed in that we're now experiencing the step down in the effective diversion limit, both the current year, which hasn't really had a practical effect. But in the following year, it could have a practical effect. And so what we'll see is there may be enough water in the ground, but we don't really have legal authority to pull it out of the ground. And so that will be what we're looking at. I do not think that's going to come into play here for this water year. And depending on how the state interprets the transitional year, meaning water year 2022, we may not have a problem in that year either, because we've got 3 months of the current water year. I'm sorry, 3 months of the current calendar year, October, November, December, which fall in the next water year. And the limits in the cease and desist order are a little higher for that 3-month period. And there's still the potential to use what's called carry forward, which is water saved over the last 3 or 4 years. So we're eyeing it all very carefully, but you know, despite all the rhetoric you hear out there, I don't think that we as the district want to be declaring a state of emergency and you know, heading down the drought with a, you know, with 3 exclamation points behind it. And as I said, we'll take this through public outreach committee tomorrow, talk about it with Cal-Am on Tuesday, and just stay tuned. We've actually been in this position before recently and made it through the year just fine. So just, you know, just keep in mind, we may be coming back to you possibly with a budget request for public outreach from one of our reserves, which is the drought/flood reserve. So, but we're not ready to do that yet. And that concludes my update on dry year response.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public?
Director Anderson, I do not see anybody with their hands raised from the attendee side.
Thank you, Joel.
Through the chair, a couple of questions. I know we are starting to talk about this, but at not this board meeting, the next board meeting, I hope we're prepared to introduce those stages 1, 2, and 3 to the public and say it's looking that way.
Yeah.
I like you to go through, you know, public outreach, see what they got to say. But in June, I think we need to, like you said, review everybody, bring them up to times, where we at and where we need to go, so they don't be so surprised that we know it's a dry year. And we might get in stage 1, 2, and 3. But I think they need to, like you point out, be advised. So I like to see that for June, if anything.
Yeah, we were already planning to do a little bit of an update at the May board meeting, because again, May is typically when we declare whether we have an emergency or not. So, and I think we'll probably beat that drum all summer long.
Okay. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, as you were making a report, Dave, my thinking went back to the 1980s when we did have rationing. And at the time it was 50 gallons per person per day, as I remember. And I'm thinking since then, personally, we probably use 25, 30 gallons a day right now, and without rationing. So the question would be, if we went to rationing, how much more can the users, the ratepayers in this district conserve?
Yeah.
What would be the cutoff? Because I don't know what the average is per person right now, but it would raise the question of, if forced rationing would happen, what kind of numbers would we look at? And not being alarmist, but what more can all the users do than they aren't doing already?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say it's primarily irrigation still. When we, I don't know, it might have been 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we went into the urban water database at the state, and we pulled up the Cal-Am district. And they've, since the last drought, since 2014, they've requested monthly reporting of total consumption on a per capita basis. And so and it's based on kind of a static population number, which may or may not be completely accurate, but it's pretty close. And so it's been 57 gallons per person per day as our average use. And and clearly if you take irrigation out of that, we're down probably in the 45, 40 per person per day on average, which means, people like you who are at 30 to 40, are helping subsidize those folks who are a little more profligate. But yeah, I think that'll be the focus, is what can we do since we've done so well? Where can you get any impact? We've hit all the low hanging fruit.
Well, and we also have a minimum per person ration, or maximum. Anyway, it's 35 gallons per person, I think, per household. And then the more people you have, the less per day you would be getting. But yeah,
Yeah, right. Because if you have 4 or 5 people in a home, you're irrigating one piece of property,
Right.
for example, versus each person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Stephanie, you were here during that period that the mayor's speaking of.
No, that was actually the 75 rationing.
Oh, didn't we ration in the?
Yeah, we rationed in 89 to 92, and that was a percentage reduction over previous usage.
So my question was going to be, how much fun was rationing?
Not.
Yes, but those were the days when we had lawns and we didn't have low flow toilets and low flow. We've made so many changes, and I'll think of the word in a minute, but we figured out how to save water. So that's why I'm saying what's left. The low hanging fruit's pretty much gone, but we'll have to see when we get there.
It's irrigation primarily, that's.
But then you look at a pandemic and you look at our hotel occupancy rate, which is low as 25%. At its worst, it's now up to 41%. And that's obviously a factor. It's hospitality and commercial as well. And how do we factor that in as far as advising? And they've done a good job, I think, of cutting down on water use as well.
One of the curious things, there was a water year where our water supply was actually better off than Santa Clara or Santa Cruz. And when they were significantly cutting back, we got a lot of members of the public came before us acting as if we were sleeping on our hands. So we actually did impose water conservation at a higher level than our own water projections would have called for, because of the public perception that we weren't doing enough.
Interesting.
And that brings me to a point of, if we look at the rationing plan, where do it come? What committee do it goes to? Water demand or water supply?
It'd be this one.
Okay, I think we need to agendize that for a future one, so y'all can get prepared. One of the last time we looked at the rationing plan, last time I remember was back when I was on the board in the 2000, when we had, matter of fact, we had to develop the rationing plan.
Yeah,
Cal-Am didn't want to. So
yeah, we rewrote it in 2016, I believe it was.
17.
17.
Okay, well, just a review.
Yeah,
A new board member.
It's simplified, but it's still pretty onerous.
Yes, and I like to put that out to the board and to the public so they know we are on top of it. So that comes with that June, maybe July, or whenever we can fit it in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I know from your outline, General Manager, that this is worst case scenario. We probably won't go there, but it doesn't hurt to have the info in our hip pocket.
I agree, Mayor.
Agreed.
Yeah. And to start talking about it before we have to do it.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the key. And I think that's really where we need to pretty much start next month.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. And we have one more issue that's on the agenda, which is the planned updates to the rules and regulations.
Director
Hang on,
Anderson, before you
Ann
move
just
on to
pulled
the
up.
next item, I do have Melody Crislott. I believe she wants
Excuse
to make public comment on the topic that we were just discussing. So
Oh, you better ask the chair about that one. I'm not chair of this meeting. Thank you anyway.
And then,
You have someone to ask questions. Let's go.
yeah, let
Thank
me
you.
go ahead and allow Melody Krislov to talk. And Melody, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thanks. I hope you take into consideration the fact that since the last drought, all of our water rates are much higher because of Cal-Am raising them. When you're talking about same kind of percentages, talking about pretty steep, outrageous increases. And the other thing I would consider too is like with people that have acreage, you probably ought to consider fire, because if you ask everyone to stop irrigating everything and let all their trees die and let every single plant in the yard go brown, you're really going to increase the fire risk. I mean, there's only so much you can do, if you've got land or a huge, property that you can do to conserve water. And most people are already doing that. So, I mean, to be penalized for doing all that we're doing would really feel wrong. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll also get people who will claim livestock exemptions and
Oh, yeah.
pets and everything. So
Do we have any more hands raised, Joel?
Director Anderson, I do not see any more hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Now,
yep, item 4 is all Stephanie Locke, and
hey,
that was the only item that had a written staff note.
yes.
So what a great segue into this next item. So the next item is discuss planned updates to the rules and regulations. And I have just a fairly short PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you. All right. So basically from time to time, we come forth with ordinances to what I call fix-it ordinances. So I keep a very lengthy list of things, little things I find in our rules and regulations that maybe don't make sense or need to be clarified, or times have changed and they need to be fixed. So I keep that list, and I put together an ordinance to do this. Like I said, probably once a year on average. Examples are things like the military site ordinance that the board will be having a first reading of in May, and things that would amend our rebate program. And Amy, I think you asked questions about the rebate program in the past. And so one of the things that we've talked about doing is adding a rebate for flow meters that can identify when there's a leak in the house. Would be something we'd be adding to that. Our landscape regulations need to be updated. The board has granted variances for apartment submetering, and I think that's something that we probably need to make a permanent rule about. Well metering requirements. Right now we have requirements for wells that are in the Monterey Peninsula Water Resource System, but we don't require require meters on wells that are outside the resource system. And it probably is just a best management practice to have wells metered throughout the district. And then we have a number of revisions to the well regulation that we need to update. I put that lengthy list in the staff note of things, including the rationing plan. So we will have to go back and look at that. And obviously, as we discussed with Cal-Am, where we're going at this point next week, that may trigger also some other changes that we'll need to come forward with. The Water Demand Committee decides that they want to see some changes. That would be, again, this type of ordinance is the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
Hey, Stephanie,
Mm-hmm.
on our last call with Cal-Am, we talked about the regulatory trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, John has raised the issue of, how do you account for Pure Water Monterey in or out, et cetera, because of the way we wrote it. Would that be an appropriate place to kind of redraft or restate what the trigger
Yes,
is?
yeah, absolutely. So that's the kind of thing that we're, we're looking at these different changes that have come up in the past couple of years. These ordinances are complex, and in the past, I've actually brought ordinances to the Water Demand Committee and Board that just completely are mind-boggling, let's put it that way. When you try to grasp a bunch of different rules and they're not related necessarily to each other, it's really hard for our board committee members to go through those. So I'm going to try to keep them focused and small, not coming in with a huge thing that is just too much. And then these do get reviewed by Water Demand Committee or the Rules and Regulations Committee. We have to go through the CEQA process before we can actually adopt any of these ordinances. And that involves either a 20 or 30-day review period. And yeah, and so this is just a discussion item. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, the kinds of things that will be coming forward that this committee will get to review as we continue this year. And that's really all I had for a presentation. There's no action that needed to be taken.
Yeah, and if I can just add one thing about the meeting in general, with this small of a set of agenda items, in the old days of in-person meetings, we probably would have canceled. But given how easy it is now to just kind of call in and participate, we felt it was at least good enough to touch on the topics. But we apologize that there's not a whole lot of detail or action here, but at least you know where things are headed.
We never have to apologize for a short meeting.
Well, and to explain what's coming up, being a new board member, I didn't know about these kind of updates, and I didn't know what the levels of the rationing were. So I appreciate the information.
Mm-hmm.
But when are we going to start getting these? It's nice to look at. We got 12 ordinances or whatever to adjust. When we're going to start getting them so we can get them out to the board and to the public, like, what we got to update. How soon are we going to start picking these up? Like rationing and all those ones that concern us right now should be up front and the public should see them.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly true. The military ordinance is coming back. That will be on May and June.
Good, I've seen that on the agenda.
And then we have probably after that or during that period of time, we will be discussing the conservation and rationing.
Okay, good. As long as we get them on target. They're starting to come in while we're talking about this stuff to the public and the situation we're in. That's what I'll be happy with. So, okay, good job. Thank you.
I guess we can take this item out to the public. Is there anybody who would like to address the board or the committee?
Director Anderson, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Well, thank you. Well, that is a short meeting, so I guess we're.
Before you adjourn.
The work is in front of us. Sounds like a lot of stuff that we have to do. So.
But before you adjourn, Chair, I'd like to ask legal counsel and the general manager to develop a letter to our friends, the State Water Board, on that 1,000 acre feet of water that they took from us. Mr. Laredo, I know it's not on agenda, but do we have due process in that? Are we deserving of a due process? Somebody might say no right now, but give me your opinion.
Mr. Chairman, we will put together a letter to assert our position, and we will share that with you.
Okay, bring it to this board first, to this committee first, so we can look at it and make it strong, please. Make it strong. They can adjust. We are due process, 1,000 acre feet, and we are talking about we might be short, and they took 1,000. I want to keep that in line and keep that in mind while we're going through this. You know, I don't think the Mayor Clyde, have you heard anything from your letter from the state yet?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Put the history behind it.
I will work with Mr. Stolt on this.
I want history. I want a case. Build that case for us. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Lock and orders. Okay. If there's nothing else, I guess we can adjourn.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Enjoy your
all.
next meetings.
Thank you.
Always interesting. All right.